to me reminds me of the early goings of Fishhawk Ranch. You know, when Fishhawk Ranch was just starting and there wasn't much development out there, the one benefit that Wiregrass has that the Fishhawk didn't is Fishhawk, it seemed they built all the houses first and then the development came. With Wiregrass, you know, there at least were some other communities that helped push that along. There's already a lot of commercial development now, but it can turn into a really cool you know, master plan communities. There's so many neat communities out there like that.
It's got such a great feel. It's so sophisticated. It's a little bit different. I mean, you could tell it's just very manicured. It's thought out. The developer really is choosy on who they pick to build there, what they're doing. It's a really neat community. Yeah,
and I hope the you know, one downsides of Tampa Bay's growth, and you know, even Mr. Vennick with what he's doing downtown has to look at this is you know, we're seeing obviously an incredibly strong real estate market. The last few weeks I've heard rumblings of maybe a little bit of softening, but some of that's seasonal because summer's getting over and we're getting into, you know, summer's not over. I mean, it's still 97 degrees and 100% humidity. But it's true. You know, the people that are buying now may not close by the end, you know, by the end of summer. So you've got some of those, you know, seasonal things going on. But you know, we've got great population growth, and you know, strong real estate market, and renters converting to buyers, and people moving here, and companies moving here. The downside of all of that is traffic, you know, and that's the one thing that I think that the city, the county, you know, all the municipalities, as well as the developers themselves, have to keep getting on the same page with, because they have been making improvements. Like I noticed, you know, I was traveling on the, you know, the vets the other day, and I noticed they've opened up that lane, so that's helped a little bit. So we're continuing to do that and making sure to pay attention to the infrastructure with all the development we have around Tampa Bay, because you know, the last thing we want is to, you know, develop this great area and it's beautiful and it's amazing, but then it takes an hour and a half to get 20 miles, you know, and you're always going to have that sometimes because accidents happen, right? So I'm not talking about, you know, traffic when it relates to accidents, because you can't really plan or prepare for that. It's more just a natural response to average and normal traffic. That
well, they have an opportunity to get that right.
Yeah,
they do, and you know, Tampa is definitely one of the most desirable places for people outside of the area to relocate to.
Yeah,
and part of that is the fact that we don't have the congestion that you have in South Florida and in other areas. But
it's a fear that people have. I mean,
exactly.
it has changed. Like I know for a long time I was commuting from almost West Chase down to South Tampa, and the commute for me got to be too much, so we moved back into South Tampa. But then of course, like, you know, months later they had the crosstown lane or the veterans lane, and I was like, okay, well that would have been helpful. But nonetheless, I think that you know, the key to Tampa Bay continuing to thrive is getting ahead of that problem with traffic and congestion, and getting the infrastructure right. Because you know, if it's right, then everything else continues to do really well. We get, you know, more new construction, more building, more development, more population. Because the way the population is spread out now is actually pretty effective. You know, in some of the larger markets across the country, you have so much population in like a center core. People say, "Oh, well, our downtown isn't that great," but the benefit to our downtown not having gobs and gobs of residential towers is that it spreads the traffic out a little bit, so we don't have these major, you know, traffic challenges that you have in larger cities.
That's changing, though.
It is changing, which is why I brought up Mr. Vennick, and hoping that and I think they will. He's hired the right people. The conversations I've heard are that he is very aware, which is why a lot of people expected more stuff to be built by now. But it tells me they're doing their homework and they're doing it the right way. They're not rushing it. You know, his plan to do all this isn't. It's not to make a bunch of money. I mean, I'm sure he'll make a profit, but he's got plenty of that. You know, it's more of a legacy thing for him. He wants to make Tampa a legacy city. So you know, I think that they're going to nail that, and hopefully we'll keep going down the path of improving our roadways and infrastructure. So